I believe the Royals got one of the biggest steals of the draft in Jac Caglianone, falling to them at number 6, and I'm going to tell you why in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City, though right now I'm actually in Dallas, Texas, not far from Arlington, Texas, where the All-Star Week festivities will be held. Wanted to get this episode out before I head over to some media availability and press conference type deals. There will be some interviews later on. I'm still wondering if we'll have the ability to get some one-on-ones and then maybe post those for you guys later, but that's all up in the air right now. Regardless, I'll have tons of video, I'll have tons of live coverage, and tons of photos down there from Globe Life Field. So should be a lot of fun over the next 2 days or so. But back to that point, if you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, though I said I was based in Kansas City here today, my day-to-day basically involves covering Kansas City sports over at Sports Radio 810 WHB, though for a lot of you, you know that by now with listening to this podcast, or maybe you do listen to me over at 810 WHB. But for this podcast, when you come here, you click on the link, whether you're watching on any of those podcasting platforms or on YouTube, you know that you're going to get 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And questions and comments can always be left to my Twitter handle or on the YouTube channel. I'll try to get to every single one. If I'm a little bit late, just fire another one at me, and I'll try my best to get back to you in a timely manner. Well, the last couple of days have been pretty chaotic for me. I've been bouncing around a lot, moving from city to city. Was in San Francisco over the weekend. Actually had a chance to catch a couple of Giants games and then got to Arlington. So moving around a lot. Did get the chance to watch a little bit of the Major League Baseball draft in between flights. And going into the draft, I'm still was thinking about what I was going to talk about today. If it was going to go chalk and the Royals were going to take who I thought they were going to take, I don't think I would have let off a podcast episode with that pick. I would have recapped what happened in Boston, and we'll talk about that a little bit in today's episode, probably in the final segment. Thought about leading off with the All-Star Week festivities, but again, without getting there first, without talking to any of the players, what really could I dive into just yet? And then I thought about maybe talking on the Hunter Harvey trade, but, this was a bigger deal, in my opinion, the Hunter Harvey deal. We'll talk about that in segment number 2. The Royals, though, I believe, got a huge gift in Jac Caglianone falling to them at number 6 in the draft. I thought for a long time, let's just call it a long time. I'm not going to try to pigeonhole myself in saying a month or 2 or 3 months, something like that. I think in about every single mock, Jac Caglianone was going top 3. I was floored when we got outside the top 4 and he was still on the board. Even more so that both Jac Caglianone and J.J. Weatherholt were going to be on the board for Kansas City, or either or. And then, you get to that pick with Chicago, Hagen Smith, who I thought, the Royals were going to take if he was there. So now it's Jac Caglianone, J.J. Weatherholt, Connor Griffin, or Bryce Rayner. Those to me were the 4 they could have gone with for that 6th overall pick. And in years past, which is why I think things are a little bit different under the guidance of Brian Bridges, who joined the organization in the offseason. He had had a lot of successful picks, was instrumental in building up the Atlanta Braves organization. I think in years past, the Royals would have their 1 to 2 guys that they really, really liked. And no matter who fell in the draft board, they were going to take those guys. And I wanted to see something different last night. I think going to that 6th overall pick, I was fully expecting them to take Bryce Rayner at that point. I was fully committed to they liked this guy from the beginning, from everything the draft analysts were saying about who the Royals were targeting. It was Hagen Smith and it was Bryce Rayner. There really wasn't another option until the hours leading up to the draft, and you saw some Jac Caglianone smoke, but that was more so of him falling. Like if he was taken by the Reds or he was taken by the Rockies, he, of course, wouldn't have been there. But the fact that he had fallen outside the top 5, it was a gift for the Royals. And you do get a premier, high-level, elite power hitter. Yes, there is some swing and miss. And I do think you have to take college stats with a grain of salt. You can't look at somebody that hit 400 and think it's going to translate just as easily to the big league level. But I'm not sure the Royals have had this high of a ceiling in the power department since I don't even know when, to be honest with you. I'd like to say Alex Gordon, but I'm not sure Alex Gordon had this type of, high power value. Bobby Witt Jr., yes, but Bobby Witt Jr. was a can't miss, top 2 pick, 5-tool superstar, son of a major league pitcher. I mean, the pedigree was all there. And I think we were aware that a 30 home run season could be possible. I think with Jac Caglianone, the ceiling for him could be a 40-plus home run guy, 45-plus. I think the swing is very impressive. It's violent but smooth. And I know you usually don't use those words in the same sentence when going over a guy's swing or his swing path. But the fact that he was there and Brian Bridges and J.J. Picollo and the Royals said, we're not passing up that type of talent, it shows me things are different. It shows me that things have changed a little bit because in past years, I think the Royals would have stuck with who they'd been scouting because they didn't want to take a risk or take a jump on a guy they may not have scouted as heavily because they didn't think he was going to fall on the draft boards. Now, it's a crapshoot as always. The Major League Baseball draft is never an exact science. You don't look at a guy in the top 5 and go, oh, they're all going to be all-stars. It's not the case. One of those guys in the top 10 is not going to live up to top 10 potential. Probably multiple, for being honest with you. But Caglianone, going back to last year, I thought the ceiling was so ridiculous, because he's got immense home run power. He had a 500 and I think 18-foot home run earlier this year. He had 35 on the season. His OBP was well north of like 530, hit 75 home runs in 3 years at Florida. And oh, by the way, he can throw 100 off the mound. And the Royals are going to let him try to be a two-way player. That could be dissolved in the minor leagues. Maybe he doesn't really catch on as a pitcher. I think the offensive part of his game is always going to be there. We'll see, though, as a pitcher. From the left side, with his size, his length, throwing 98, 99, 100 with a good changeup, you can polish him up a little bit, and then you've got a two-way potential player. And I'm not sure that's another thing the Royals would have let happen years ago. I think they would have taken a two-way player and said, hey, look, you are far more of an offensive specimen. Let's stick with that. Let's not worry about pitching. This is the big leagues after all. This is the pros. And you can't just dominate in the way you did in high school and dominate in the way that you did in college. And with Jac Caglianone, I don't know if he is going to find success as a pitcher. He had already had arm injuries before, so maybe it doesn't work out. The good thing is, though, I think he's a far superior offensive player. But you have an offensive player that I think can also handle first base very well. And I had a couple of comments last night about, well, what are they going to do at first base? Jac Caglianone is going to be a quick riser. Why is that pick being made for a first baseman when the Royals have a first baseman, Vinny Pasquantino? Well, I can promise you this. If Vinny Pasquantino and Jac Caglianone are on the same roster at the same time, which I believe they will be, Jac Caglianone is going to be the first baseman. I think they would move Vinny to DH at that point, maybe further committing Salvador Perez to be behind the plate to close out his career. But Jac Caglianone is going to be that star piece, that centerpiece of this draft class, and I think of your minor league system for the next 2 years. I am not going to be shocked in the slightest if he fast tracks to the big leagues. I think the Royals are going to want to take their time with him. He doesn't turn 22 until I want to say February. I think it is another calendar year before we see him turn 22. So he's on the younger side. And I think that's a very intriguing part of this pick. I think the tools are endless. Yes, there's swing and miss there, but the power and I think the talent was too much to pass up. And Brian Bridges said it himself. What a pick by the Royals. I thought that was an absolute gift. This is the second most excited I think I've been for a pick behind Bobby Witt Jr. and I don't know how long. I think the upside is absolutely tremendous for a guy like Jac Caglianone. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about that deal that was made over the weekend and all that came with it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to a few of the sponsors, starting with Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn about. Yes, I am talking about your rivals cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rivals city. And as I'm doing this podcast, I am in the Dallas area, the Fort Worth area, Arlington. Booking.com is where you need to go to when you're finding a place to stay, whether you're heading in today for the Home Run Derby tonight or tomorrow for the All-Star game. You can always get covered there with Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals, of course. It doesn't matter if it's the White Sox, the Guardians, the Twins, the Tigers. You can just get covered and have fun in that city. So book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. Also want to let you know about SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades at SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? You can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Over the weekend, as I was out of town and after the Royals had just lost Game 2 in a 3-game series against the Boston Red Sox, they had made a deal in acquiring Hunter Harvey from the Washington Nationals, sending Caden Wallace and the 39th pick in the draft over to Washington. And I thought at the time the reaction to it was going to be a little bit strong because Caden Wallace was the Royals' number 2 prospect in the system and was a second-round pick and had played, for the most part, pretty well at the minor league level, had played well in Double-A Northwest Arkansas. He was a joy to watch. He was a guy I thought that could profile to be a pretty good defensive third baseman. And with the way the third base depth is looking right now at the big league level, maybe Caden Wallace could have been a guy that was in the lineup at some point next year. But you're not looking to next year with third base. You're looking wise on a year like this in which you are 2 games out of a wild card spot. You are, I think, 7 games back in the division. There still is an opportunity to make a push. And what did we say time and time again with this Royals team? They are going to need to bolster the bullpen if it's ever going to be a competitive September, if it is going to be an interesting September. They can't stick with the guys they have right now. Even if they do hit their stride to really put together a strong second half, they needed that swing and miss in the bullpen. They needed that power in the bullpen. And I think what I love best about this deal, you have Hunter Harvey for another year. You have him for a year and a half of control, basically. And bullpen arms have a short lifespan. So if you have Hunter Harvey for the end of this year and he stays for next year, I think you can capitalize on it. I think with Caden Wallace, it is one of those trades where you have to put a lot into perspective. And one of those main things is the Royals don't have a deep farm system. They are bottom 5 in numerous websites, prospect, Baseball America lists and Prospects Live and MLB.com. I mean, a lot of different ones. They are not going to be top 10. They're not going to be top 15. And what teams trading with the Royals can do is leverage that aspect of going, we're not going to take your call unless you are seriously thinking about giving up your second best prospect, your third best prospect. And I imagine the Royals are saying Blake Mitchell is untouchable. Caden Wallace, to me, never felt untouchable because he hasn't played a lot this year. The Royals like him, but, Blake Mitchell was a first-round pick from last year. And it also took a little bit more than just Caden Wallace. But when you don't have a deep farm system, when you don't have a top 5 one where you can just throw your 20th ranked prospect at a team, the Royals had to get more creative. That since they don't have a high ranking class or a high ranking system, those other teams are going to say, well, we're not going to take your 10th best prospect, right? On the fly right now, as I'm going through the Royals top 30 prospects, because for a while I heard people, say they wanted the Royals to look into trading, Drew Waters or Daniel Lynch or Nick Pratto. Well, those guys aren't being asked about by other teams, right? You're looking for guys that they can take on, control, and develop and turn into their own player, right? And Caden Wallace is still a young prospect. But with the Royals, you have Blake Mitchell as your number 1, Kudrna is your 2, Mozzicato is your 3, Barnett is your 4, Walters is your 5, Cross is your 6, Ricardo is your 7, Tyler Gentry is your 8th, Carter Jensen as your 9th, Chandler Champlain is your 10th. If the Royals went to the Nationals and said, we'll give you Tyler Gentry because, hey, he's a top 10 prospect in our system, that's got to sound great to you, correct? The Nationals are going to say, no, that doesn't sound good to us at all because your 9th-ranked prospect is not the 9th-ranked prospect in a great system, a deep system. Now, let me be clear. I think the Royals farm system is getting better. I think there's a chance that this system does get back to the top 10 levels. It's going to take some time, and the Royals are fully aware of that. But with trying to bolster the major league roster, you're not going to fool any of these other teams. You're not going to fool the Nationals and Mike Rizzo of giving you one of their top-end guys in the bullpen for some, guy that's blocked, right? If you go out there and get, like, for example, the Jose Cuas deal, the Cubs were able to trade Nelson Velasquez because he was blocked, and all they got in return was Jose Cuas. Like, that's doable. If you're going to get a power arm that you were looking for, a swing and miss guy in the back end of your bullpen, you got to give up something that you like. You have to give up prospects that are considered to be high value, whether they be your second best prospect, your third best prospect. I understood fans getting upset and thinking that's too much. But the Royals can't really fleece anybody in a deal when you don't have a deep system, right? They can't go now to, let's say, Oakland. Let's say the A's, for example. They couldn't go to Oakland and offer up, I would even say, somebody like Trevor Warner, your 19th ranked prospect, for Lucas Ursig. You couldn't do that. Even for Michael Kopech, they're not going to settle for, Hunter Owen or Carson Rocafort or maybe Anthony Veneziano or Austin Charles, any of those guys. They're going to want more. And I think that this trade kind of set the market with the relievers. I think that the Royals kind of know what it takes, and maybe this is all they were going to do. They were going to add one arm there, see what happens over the next couple of weeks, and go from there. But to me, I wasn't too disappointed. Hunter Harvey is a guy that the Royals desperately need. I think that he was overused a little bit in Washington, hence the bad 7 or 8 outings that he's had, although 2 of those outings he imploded a little bit, which is why the numbers are so poor. But he strikes out over 10 guys per 9. He doesn't walk many guys. Last year he was great. The year before that he was great. He's a perfect setup guy for the Royals. I think he'll be used right off the bat, but also sparingly so that they don't overwork him in the way that I thought the Nationals overworked him already with 45 innings this year for a setup guy. And you get him for next year. You get an extra year of control, which is why I think the trade had to involve that extra pick. Where if he was a rental, maybe it's just Caden Wallace or maybe it's just that pick. But since Hunter Harvey has that extra year of control, the price was going to be a little bit steeper. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, the All-Star festivities begin later on tonight. or I guess I could say they already have begun. But while I'm down here going to be starting this afternoon, we're going to talk about all that coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about our final sponsor in Game Time. And if you're thinking about traveling down to Arlington to go to the Derby tonight or to go to the All-Star game tomorrow, maybe you already had the chance to go to the Futures game the other day, go buy your tickets at Game Time. It is going to be the best app to use, whether you're going by yourself, you're going with another person, you're going with multiple people. They got great bundle deals. They're always going to have you covered no matter what you're looking for. And it's not just baseball games. Maybe you're going out of town, you want to catch a concert. Maybe you're going to a comedy show. Whatever it may be, Game Time is going to have those tickets ready for you. They're going to have great deals, and you're never going to have to stress about when those tickets are going to be coming. You'll get them almost instantaneously. I buy all my tickets over at Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, with the All-Star festivities beginning, it's a huge week for the Royals. They kind of limp into the break, taking only 1 of 3 against Boston. They lose the final 2 games. Yesterday was a little bit harder to stomach because they were right there in the 9th in a bad base running decision, either by Garrett Hampson or Vance Wilson or both. It didn't work out. Well, as I am in Arlington, I am just about a few hours away from heading over to Globe Life Field for some media availability, some interviews, getting some good video photos. We'll have all of that covered, and you can find that on my Twitter handle at JohnnyJ_15. But should be a fun night. The Derby's tonight. Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be partaking in the home run derby. He right now is the second most likely to win the Derby. He's the second highest odds, or has the second highest odds to win the Derby. I believe that was on FanDuel last time I had checked. He's behind Gunnar Henderson. Should be awesome, though. Going to be a great crowd out there, a homecoming for Bobby Witt Jr. And then we're going to find out, unless I missed anything on social media, maybe by the time I post this, there will be a report out there of who the All-Star game starter will be for the American League. It still could be Seth Lugo. Maybe his start in Boston to close out the series. I know that was actually game 2, not game 3. It was Singer on Sunday, but his last start of the second half, I should have said to close out the second half, not the series. That didn't go so well, so maybe that hurts his chances a little bit. I believe it's going to be Tarek Skubal, but nonetheless, I think Seth Lugo gets into this game, or Cole Reagans gets into this game for the American League. Salvador Perez, 9th All-Star game. What more can you say about him? And then Bobby Witt Jr. likely getting into the game tomorrow night pretty early on when looking at what the roster has in the American League and how early I think that Bruce Bochy is going to make a move like that. But this is going to be such a fun week. I kind of wanted to make this final segment a hybrid between telling you what's going on and then a recap of that Boston series. But you'll have tons of content from me today and tomorrow. We're going to be doing some podcasting episodes today and then also tomorrow morning. We'll be back to usual on Wednesday, likely an evening time episode, and then Thursday and Friday as well. No games to talk about other than the All-Star game. We'll try my best to work around the connection problems. Sometimes when I'm not in my usual podcasting room, it's unpredictable. I know this episode's already going to have a couple of hiccups there, but hopefully for the most part, you still get the 30 minutes or the 28 minutes, whatever it will be, and you enjoy the content. Can't really control that, out of my control when it comes down to connection issues. I know in Surprise, I had that multiple times, and that was frustrating, trying to give you guys content when you didn't have the strongest of connection. But I think we might be able to get it all ironed out for tomorrow. But I know for today, a little bit different. Audio might have changed. Camera quality might have changed. All I hope is that you can still hear me talking, unlike what happened in Surprise when I did an entire episode and no audio was recorded. So that was just a waste of an episode, hoping that doesn't happen this time around. But yes, we'll have content today, tons on Twitter, have some on YouTube. Might try to find a way to get those one-on-one interviews uploaded at some point. But again, that's all going to be up in the air depending on a connection and if I actually can get those one-on-one interviews. Now, as for the series in Boston, I think you have to be pretty frustrated with the way it went. You only take one game of three. You won game one with Cole Reagans dominating. And I just thought that with Seth Lugo lined up to go on Saturday, Brady Singer against Brian Bayo going up on Sunday, at minimum, you got to take that series. And then you go into the break tied for the final wild card spot. But now you're chasing once again. You trail Boston by 2 games. That is going to be something that you could look back on at the end of the year and think, man, if they just would have taken one of those games in Boston, you feel a lot differently. Though the Red Sox have been red hot. They have been a team that is not just, beaten up on pitching, good pitching at that. They've beaten up on just about anybody in every single aspect. They've had one of the better records in the American League over the past few months or so. They may not have the most glamorous roster. They may not have the roster that stands out the most, but they are a damn good baseball team. And I think they exploited that on Saturday and Sunday when the Royals trailed. When they were shut out by Cutter Crawford, they lose 5-0. And then Brady Singer puts the team in a hole early on Sunday. The offense tries to claw back. But again, it was that base running blunder in the end that prevented the Royals from making a serious push to take the lead in that inning. And you walk into the All-Star break, now down 2 games. You have an easier second half to open it up. And we've talked about soft scheduling. I get that's not really something Royals fans are too high on because the Royals didn't capitalize after their gauntlet too well. But it's another opportunity. They'll see the White Sox for 6 games. They'll see Boston for 3 in Kansas City. They'll see the Tigers. They'll see the Cubs. There are some opportunities to gain some ground and maybe firmly put your spot back in the wild card picture. But you do limp in to the All-Star break. And I think for Royals fans, it's frustrating now to not have baseball until Friday. But when they come back on Friday, they'll have their bullpen with a little bit of a new feel to it, new blood to it, with Hunter Harvey coming in to revamp the back end, and maybe an offense that got a much-needed week off and a rotation that needed a week off to get some rest, to reset, and make a strong push for the second half. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to hopefully have everything all sorted out and bring you another morning episode from Arlington at the All-Star Week festivities. See if Bobby Witt Jr. is the Home Run Derby champ. I'll be out there tonight. Tons of video, tons of audio. Should be lots of fun. But until tomorrow morning, you take it easy, Kansas City.